Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Texan Senior Residential Care Homes, ATD Painting, and Performance Food Group. Texan Senior Residential Care Homes, senior care at its best with a family atmosphere. They specialize in making their facilities as close to a home living experience as possible. Not only that, there are no move-in fees and there are no visitation restrictions. They are located near I-635 in Marsh Lane in Dallas, right near Carrollton. For more information, you can call 469-400-7650. That is Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. And now, let's podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor at Star Local Media, and I'm being joined by Brian Murphy and Taylor Ragland. On today's podcast, we're going to preview the third round of the high school football playoffs, including can Mesquite Horn and Frisco Lone Star keep that playoff mojo rolling? Can Allen exact revenge on the Woodlands? But first, let's talk about our game of the week. And for this, we head out to, it was actually a very contentious vote between a couple Frisco ISD schools. Ironically enough, the two best football programs in Frisco ISD this year, Reedy and Lone Star. Ultimately, though, the Lions get the nod in this one, Brian. Friday, 7 o'clock at South Lakes Dragon Stadium, Frisco Reedy versus Burleson Centennial in the regional semifinal round of the playoffs. Both of these programs relatively young. You know, Reedy obviously in just its third year as a varsity program, Centennial in its seventh year. Both programs enjoying what could say is their best seasons ever, though. I mean, with Centennial, even though they've been around for a little bit longer, this is their second appearance in the third round. They did so back in 2015, but they did set a program record with 11 wins this season versus a Reedy program that had not won a playoff game prior to this season and is now not only bound for the third round, but I mean, the Lions certainly have some pretty high expectations as far as where they think this playoff run could eventually end up. So, Brian, you were actually just at Reedy earlier this week to talk with quarterback Josh Foskey for our podcast interview on Monday. What is the mood around Reedy like right now? I mean, how is the program handling the? It was one thing to knock out the regular season milestones and all that, but now they're in a full-fledged playoff run. What is the mood like around the program right now?
Well, I think in the field house they have a room set up for me now with my own bed and nightstand and everything, and just been there all week. No, Reedy, they're good. They know they're good, and I know they're telling me and they're saying publicly they're not looking too much into that possible matchup with Alito next week, but they know they have the team, the talent, the size, the coaching and all that to breeze by Burleson Centennial. And this could be a trap game for Reedy. This could be one of those dangerous games where, you overlook an opponent too much. But I just don't see that happening. I know we're not diving into predictions and all that stuff yet, but I don't see a way Reedy loses this week at Dragon Stadium.
If there's anything that could make them lose, though, it's because Burleson Centennial is not like any team that they have seen this season. It's the reason why it's a tricky matchup is because Burleson Centennial runs it's a style of offense that it's much like Frisco High. You just don't see teams that run the old flexbone offense, and it's something that Centennial has deployed to much success this year. And it's again much like these teams that we mentioned Frisco High. I know that obviously they're in the same district as Reedy, but obviously the wing tee flexbone not exactly the same thing, but it's the same kind of methodology in that when you go up against an offense that you're just not acclimated to seeing, I mean, it's very difficult to kind of prepare for that kind of stuff on just a 4 or 5 days notice.
Yeah, and it's a similar concept to what Midlothian ran last week with the triple option. Yeah. They had 5 or 6 guys run the football last week. Midlothian, their main goal was to run the ball, get the time possession under their belts, and then break a big play. A big play. Josh Foskey, Reedy quarterback, told me earlier this week, that's what they're expecting this week from Burleson Centennial, to keep the Reedy offense off the field and have those, they want to have, Burleson Centennial, they want to have those methodical drives and then bust one. Midlothian was able to do that a little bit. They had a 70-yard touchdown run to start the second half, but that was really all they had against Reedy. And Reedy kind of has the upper hand. They faced Frisco this year. They faced Midlothian, teams that have these, one style type offenses. And I think think Reedy they have the size, they have the personnel. I think they can stop that. And Foskey told me earlier this week, what they're going to have to do offensively again is score on every single possession like they did last week against Midlothian. They scored on their first 8 drives.
Wow.
Whether it was a touchdown or a field goal, the only offensive possession in which they did not score is when they kneeled out the game, the final possession of the ball game. So I don't think Burleson Centennial has the guys on defense to stop what Reedy has offensively. You look at their offensive line. Did you see Reedy play this year?
I don't think I have.
Okay, I thought you'd like Dallas or one of those games. But no, their offensive line, if you ever see them in person, their offensive line is so big. Bigger than Lone Star, bigger than Prosper's, bigger than some of the other bigger schools that I cover. And they're huge, and I think that could be a problem for Burleson Centennial.
As far as what Centennial brings to the table, we mentioned that they do run the flex bun offense. They're not going to throw the ball much at all. Quarterback Kyle Burns, he attempted only, just looking for what box scores I was able to find, he attempted just 6 passes in their wins over Arlington Seguin and Dallas Kimball. They do have another guy, Hank Meyer, who will come in occasionally throw a couple passes, but again, they didn't throw the ball more than 8 times in either of those 2 aforementioned games. Much like Frisco, it's kind of a death by 1,000 cuts style of running, where it's not, there's no one true bell cow, but there's going to be 5-6 guys who are going to toe the rock 6 to 10 times a piece. Guys like Chris Mosley, Jalen Jackson, Zion Ababio. There's no way I pronounced that name correctly. But the backfield could be a bit short-handed this week. Their normal fullback, out of the flex bone, their fullback Jeff Curvin, he was either injured against Corsicana in their last playoff game or beforehand, so the backfield could be a little bit limited, and he's kind of been the anchor. He had 173 yards on just 9 carries and 4 touchdowns in their by-district playoff game. But I mentioned Chris Mosley, and he's a name that I would assume that if Curvin's unable to go on Friday, that Chris Mosley is going to be one of the chief beneficiaries, and not only in the backfield, but he also doubles as a major weapon on special teams. Against Corsicana, he had some very key plays in the return game, and he also blocked 2 kicks. So you got to be mindful of him, and pretty much any time he's on the field, you got to pay attention to him. And then we mentioned what Centennial's defense, what threat they might be able to pose against Reedy in that offensive line. I guess probably the kind of the anchor of that defense is up front with Mason Richards. He had 3 sacks against Corsicana. DeQuan Campbell in the secondary had a couple interceptions. It's a defense that's played pretty well. They're only allowing 17.8 points per game, so at least on paper, the numbers are fairly even across the board, between these 2 programs.
Good luck getting those sacks against the offensive line. Josh Foskey, he rarely turns the ball
Does he
over.
get sacked often?
No.
Or pressured, or just how? The times you've seen him, how often is he under duress?
Rarely. Against Midlothian, a second-round playoff opponent, there were times he's just sitting there in the pocket, and he had all day to throw, and that's how he was able to hit Bennett Meekum for 3 touchdowns, 3 big touchdowns in that game. He found Nolan Matthews for a touchdown in that game. He has time to throw, and like you said, even though they have some guys on that defensive front, it seems like that's where the strength for Centennial is. I don't think they can penetrate what past that Reedy offensive line. But we'll see. And that Mosley kid that you mentioned, he had a big 57-yard punt return to set up their go-ahead score as well. So if they can hone in on some of those playmakers, which I think Reedy can do, I just don't see Centennial scoring a lot of points. But Centennial, they have played in a lot of close games this year, just looking at their schedule against Corsicana and some other teams. They had a blowout loss to Aledo, I think was the last time they lost.
That's their only loss this season. It was back in week 3.
And, everyone has lost to Aledo. So, but, a lot of their other games, they've had to squeak by wins. Either that could be, cause for concern with them, seeing that Reedy has just kind of cruised along in their undefeated 12-0 mark, or maybe if they can make Reedy uncomfortable, that first half, kind of maybe jump on them early and weather a storm, then who knows? Reedy can be uncomfortable, and Centennial is used to being in these close games. Who knows? We'll see. But that's their best bet, is to weather that storm and, get some touchdowns early in that game, or they'll fall too far behind.
Yeah, given just the stylistic profile of these two teams, I think the first quarter will be perhaps the most telling of the four on Friday as far as where this game is headed. And if Reedy is in for a threat, because when you are, I mean, it's no secret that if you are a run-based offense, that I don't know how many times Centennial's had to dig out of a potential double-digit deficit, but obviously that's death, because I mean, just the times you're up against the clock, and if you're unless you can rip off a big play here and there, which I think Centennial's capable of, but I'm not sure they can do so against Reedy. But if they if they are to fall behind early on, things could get out of hand pretty quickly. And
I think they will. And are you ready for my prediction now?
Go for it.
Reedy wins this by 30 points.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't have an exact score, but they'll win by about 30 points.
Wow.
I think it's just hard for a team like it's that classic conversation I feel like we've had a million times this year of one team has to have the game go exactly one way, and the other team can beat you in a variety of ways. And Burleson has to get out early, eat up a lot of the clock, run the ball well,
force turnovers,
stop Reedy. Like, the whole point of keeping the Reedy offense off the field is that when they do get back on the field, you have to stop them. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I like the win of Corsicana. I like some of their wins this year. I think that they're a fine football team, but Reedy is just, I think it's just going to be too much, and too many things have to go right. It's like, you look at the Rockwell Allen game, so many things have to go perfectly right for you to knock off a team like this, like Reedy, that's rolling so well and is so talented. It's not impossible, certainly not impossible, but I think it's just tough.
You said something interesting there. Centennial, they're a fine team, but Reedy, they're a great team.
Yeah.
So, like you said,
we wouldn't be having the conversation about a potential Reedy-Alito matchup and how intriguing that would be if Reedy wasn't a cut above teams like Burleson Centennial. So nothing's ever impossible in the playoffs. Crazy things happen, but I think so much just has to go right for them that it's unlikely. Let's put it highly unlikely.
It'll take a 3+ turnover game for Reedy, which is very uncharacteristic of them. Some fluky things will have to happen for Centennial to pull off the upset in this one.
I was just curious. I was just checking up while you guys were talking, just what some of the computer projections have for this matchup, just to see what the algorithms say the projected margin of victory should be. CalPreps.com only favors Reedy to win this game by 5.
Oh man,
for what it's worth. And then the Massey ratings have Reedy by 12.
Okay.
So
the Murphy ratings have Reedy by 30.
By 30, wow. We shall see. Like you guys, I'm siding with Reedy in this as well. Just again, like you said, Taylor, just more ways to win. And at this juncture of the playoffs, just if you're going to play this game out 100 times, just the variety of ways in which Reedy can win this game, I think will play itself out on Friday. I do not think it's going to be just an absolute laugher, though. I think this will be a 14 to 17 point victory. That is a look at kind of just our general take on this one. Obviously, though, wanted to get some thoughts on Reedy and just and their side of things as far as how they're feeling heading into the third round. And for that, we called upon their Swiss Army knife.
He does it all.
So if I'm going to classify him as Reedy, what position would you slot him as?
Linebacker. He's their best linebacker. He was an all-district first-team linebacker last year as a sophomore. I mean, but he's also their kicker. He boots 40+ yard field goals. He kicks off on kickoffs. He'll more times than not tackle the return man.
We're speaking of Will Harbour, by the way.
And a man that needs no introduction, really. And he's their wildcat quarterback. He scored plenty of touchdowns this year on offense as well.
I believe the reigning All-Collin County Utility Player of the Year.
He'll be in strong contention for that once again. No doubt about it.
So yes, let's Brian had a chance to swing by Reedy, talk with Will Harbour in anticipation of the Lions' big game this week against Burleson Centennial, and we will see what Will Harbour had to say after a word from the sponsor. Let's take a quick break to talk about ATD Painting. Whether it's painting, staining, carpentry, residential, commercial, interior, or exterior, ATD Painting has you covered. They have 4 locations in the Metroplex, including Plano and Louisville. You can call 972-694-8888 for more information, or you can visit their website at atdpainting.com. That is ATD Painting. Check it out to see just how affordable professional painting can be. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
All right, I'm here with Mr. Will Harbour, and he's Mr. Do Everything for this Reedy Lion football team. Will, explain to me your role on this football team first. I think you can do it better than myself.
I kick, I play middle linebacker and wildcat quarterback.
Now, there's a lot of positions. It's literally in all three phases of the game. Which position is your favorite?
I like playing defense the most.
Now, is that your original position on linebacker?
Yes, yeah.
Now, so how did you start playing all three? How did that come about?
Whenever I played in Little League, I played middle linebacker, and then I also was quarterback, and then I got kicking from when I played soccer before I started playing football.
Gotcha. So linebacker is your favorite out of the three. Which, I guess, NFL or college player have you looked up to and you tried to emulate your game after?
Probably Sean Lee or Luke Kuechly.
No, why is that?
They're just great football players.
Now, so you've been with this program since you were a freshman. You played a lot as a freshman. The year that y'all, I believe, won 3 games, only won one district game. And then now here y'all are just 2 years later, 3 rounds deep in the playoffs, 12-0. What has this journey been like personally for you, seeing it from the very bottom, when y'all didn't have any seniors to start off, and then now to where y'all are today?
It's kind of amazing seeing all the work that we've put in and how we've worked so hard for what we've wanted, and this has been our goal, to just keep grinding, keep working, and getting to where we are. Now,
I asked Josh Foskey this a few days ago. What did that playoff loss last year, when y'all, were kind of expected to maybe beat Lake Dallas, even though it was y'all's second year as a program, what did that, heartbreaking loss, the 37-34 loss, kind of teach y'all going into this season?
It taught us that winning a playoff game is going to be hard, and it's going to be well fought. So you have to kind of lit a fire in us, and we knew we had to play, and they district switched, so they're in our district, and we had to work harder than ever.
Now, speaking of the playoffs, you'll have a third round game, big game coming up tomorrow night against Burleson Centennial, a team that y'all have never faced before. They're a relatively young program as well. They have 11 wins. What's the scouting report on those guys? What are the keys to victory to beat them?
It's kind of just like last week against Midlothian, kind of the same thing. They run the same kind of offense, similar offense, and I believe if we just keep playing how we're playing on offense and defense and not giving up too many big plays and just keep scoring, then we'll be good.
Now, when the offense last week scored on their first 8 drives, what does that do for the defense, knowing that y'all are going to get a little bit of breather? Reedy's not going to go 3 and out, so often on offense, and you're starting linebacker, and you're like, hey, I can get a little bit of a break before I have to go kick this extra point or kick this field goal or go back out there in a wildcat or what have you.
It's really nice having them score that much, because then it's kind of relief, because really we have to stop them only a couple times to then get the win. So
sure. Now I have to ask you before I let you go. I know y'all aren't looking too far ahead, but if y'all win this week, and if a team over there called Aledo, I don't know if y'all heard about them, but if they win, if they take care of business against South Oak Cliff, y'all would be pinned against each other in the 4th round next week. How much of that is on y'all's mind?
Honestly, I haven't really thought about it. Focused on this week against Centennial, so.
Thanks again to Will Harbour for taking the time to chat with Brian for our Student Athlete Spotlight, previewing our game of the week, Frisco Reedy versus Burleson Centennial, Friday, 7 o'clock at a Dragon Stadium in Southlake. Should be a fun one. We got 4 more games that are on the docket as far as some of the main games to watch in our coverage area for the 3rd round of the playoffs. So let's quick hit those, give some picks, and for this, let's go all the way down to Sam Houston State University. A game Friday, 7 o'clock. Mesquite Horn, the best. I believe they're now up to 5 wins, the best 5-win team remaining in the playoffs. They go up against mighty Spring Westfield. Horn, I mean, they've shaken off the 0-7 start. They're now 3 rounds deep in the playoffs, 2 wins away from drawing even on the season. I don't know. Let's see. Taylor, you had a bit of a dissenting pick in this one, so you see the Jaguars keeping that playoff mojo going. So talk a little bit about what has you rolling with the Jaguars on Friday.
I think it is the mojo. I think it's the, they've won 5 in a row after going 0-7, and it was one of those 0-7s we talked when they were 0-4, 0-5, 0-6, 0-7. At every stage, they were the best O and X team, going, and the teams that they were losing to certainly were no pushovers, and they've kind of proven that, they've kind of rounded into form, especially Jermaine Givens. into the team that we all thought they were going to be. You know, when they played Allen at the beginning of the year, we all thought that was going to be a much different game than it ended up being. And Horns kind of rounded into more of that team, not an 0-7 team. 45 points in their past 4 games. Beat Wiley, a surprising Wiley team. I think is better than a lot of people thought. And the thing that concerns me about spring Westfield is the lack of scoring on their side. I mean, their defense is obviously doing everything it needs to do. They gave up 6 points in a 10-6 victory in the first round, 17 in a 24-17 overtime victory in the second round. So it's really going to be a battle of, can Jermaine Givens come out and put that kind of offensive performance together for Horn against obviously a very good defense and a tough opponent. More as you've talked about this week, more on caliber with the kind of teams that Horn was losing to earlier in the year. So I could see it going either way. It's certainly not going to be a laugher or going to be a blowout either way, I don't think. But I don't know. I think that the way Horn is rolling and the momentum that they've kind of built in this turnaround and the way their offense is going might be enough to edge them in a high-scoring affair potentially. We'll see.
Yeah, and if the Horn folks need any reason to feel confident in Taylor being the one that picks them, Taylor's been in first place in the picket line pretty much all season.
Yeah, you guys are right on my heels though now.
Yeah.
That's about to change.
Yeah,
we're
close.
Coming, or at least you're coming for him.
I'm one game back.
This is the only game, yeah.
Yeah, I'm one game back, you Taylor, and guess what? The only game that you and I have different on the picket line is this week. This one. I think that Westfield's defense is just going to be a tad too much.
Yeah.
And say what you will again, the 10-6 win over Klein in the first round, not necessarily the most pleasing result from an aesthetic standpoint. I do think that Cypress Ranch victory, though, is a bit more emblematic of the kind of caliber of program that Westfield is. That's a Cy Ranch team that was ranked in the top 10 in the entire state at the time. I mean, so to get a win of that caliber, I do think that there may be a bit more from just an overall skill standpoint and talent standpoint, a bit closer to the kinds of teams that was giving Horn trouble during the 0-7 start. So I like Westfield to get the win. Plus, you got to factor in the travel aspect.
Yeah, that is another factor that I didn't touch on. Horn's got to go a lot further than
Westfield won the coin toss in this one, as Horn will have to travel 175 miles south to Sam Houston State University versus just 50 miles of travel for Westfield. So got to factor that into. But yes, I like Westfield to get the win here. And the picket line was in strong favor of Westfield in this one. Taylor, you the dissenting vote in a 5-1 margin for Westfield. So myself, Brian, Justin Thomas, Devin Hassan, Kendrick Johnson, all siding with Spring Westfield to get the win over Horn. Let's shift gears to Saturday, 1 p.m., McLean Stadium in Waco. Allen and the Woodlands. They meet again.
The rematch. First
time since 2016. Obviously, for those who are unaware, the Woodlands, the last team to defeat Allen. They handed Allen a loss back in the 2016 6A Division I state semifinals. Only the second time I've ever seen Allen lose a game in person.
Wow.
Who's
the other one?
When they lost to Westlake the year before, the one that snapped the streak. I went back through and read my game story from that 2016 game. It's weird because how's this for a weird Allen stat? So they lost the game to the Woodlands 36-28, and just an 8-point loss. Nothing major. That is the most that Allen has lost a football game by since 2008.
Good Lord.
To Euless Trinity, and they lost by 10. So we're now past the point where, and that Trinity game was back in, I believe, September 2008. So we're now past the marker where it's been an entire decade and Allen has not lost a game by double digits.
When was the last time they got blown out?
I would have to dig up that number. I did not know that one off the top of my head, but it's been a hot minute.
Wow.
The Woodlands, it was very similar to the Westlake game in that they got Allen in a huge hole early on. Allen was down in this one, I believe, as much as 23 points, 26-3 in the second half. They were able to mount a bit of a comeback, because that's what Allen will do. They'll win the second half, no matter the stakes, it seems. But they just had a really tough time handling just the speed of the Woodlands receivers receivers, plus the quarterback at the time, Eric Schmid, and his dual threat capabilities. Just really, and then Allen they kind of got behind the 8 ball early. They had I believe they had a field goal blocked on their opening drive, and then they threw an interception the following series. So just an ill wind was blowing all afternoon as far as this being a very unorthodox game for Allen. And then to ask head coach Terry Gamble just to kind of reflect on that game, I mean, he was as blunt as he's been with me in that we got what we deserved. That was his exact quote, basically saying that the preparations leading up to that game in 2016 weren't what they should have been, that they did not have the best week of practice, and yeah, he said just flat out, we got what we deserved that day. So it'll be interesting to see just how much has changed. Obviously, it's not the same Woodlands team as there was 2 years ago. It's a new head coach, albeit it's not like they brought in an outsider. They promoted their longtime offensive coordinator to take over as head coach. This is his first year, and they got off to a bit of a rocky start. Had a 0-2 beginning to the year, but have since rounded back into form. I believe they've won 9 of 10 games, and I guess stylistically, Coach Gamble said there's a lot of the same elements to as the team that that Allen saw a couple years ago, but perhaps not the at least just from what I've been able to gather, just not maybe the explosiveness that team had. The defense went through a bit of a shaky game last week in giving up 50 points to I believe who was it, Round Rock Cedar Ridge.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. I guess Allen. obviously the motivation is there's never been an easier game to motivate Allen for than a chance to get revenge on the Woodlands. I think that it helps that Allen was tested last week in a way that they hadn't been up to this point all season, having to really grind out a game for the through all 4 quarters for the very first time all season, when they were able to outlast Rockwall 52-40 in a game that really challenged Allen in a way that no other team has, just with Rockwall's dynamic passing offense. So I think that should at least help serve as some sort of a tune-up. Anxious to see if Woodlands has got the ability to put up some points. I don't know necessarily to the level of a Rockwall, but with the defense and them taking needing at least a half to kind of adjust to what Rockwall was doing, I'm anxious to see what the encore is and if they have a bit more of the kind of the more even keel performances that we've come to know out of the Allen defense. I like Allen though in this one, obviously, to get their revenge. I think that they can do so in the neighborhood of 14 to 17 points. I think it can be an all right game for for 2.5 quarters or so, and then Allen just kind of pulls away as they will be one to do.
You're not predicting a 30-point blowout?
I'm not. Although, hey, I've shot low on just about every Allen margin of victory this season.
It is hard to predict how many points Allen will beat someone by. Let's put it that way.
Yes, except for the Plano West game, I was spot on for them beating Plano West by 56.
That's true.
Now, does this sound right? In 2006, Southlake beat Allen 38-0 in the playoffs. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds
okay.
right.
So that might have been not official, but that might have been the time frame of the last blowout.
And it was an entirely different epoch in the in the Allen story.
And that's when Southlake was Southlake.
So. With all caps. Now Allen's the team that's in all caps. And it was a clean sweep on the picket line. Everyone likes Allen to go down to Waco and punch their ticket to the regional final. It's a 6-0 sweep for Allen to exact revenge on the Woodlands. Let's see. Let's go with another game. That is on Saturday, 2 p.m. out at Apogee Stadium. Hebron taking on Haltom. The Hawks bound for the 3rd round for the first time since 2007. It's been a hot minute, man, since Hebron's had a run like this. We'll see if they can build off of this performance against Richardson Pierce. Quarterback Carson Harris had. You'd have to probably search pretty far back to find a dual threat performance quite like this from the quarterback position at Hebron. 171 passing yards, 208 rushing yards, and 6 total touchdowns. It's going to be. There is some major shootout potential in this game, because if there's one thing, obviously Hebron can put up the points. So can Haltom. Haltom, which we mentioned on Monday, has been one of the noteworthy stories as far as a team that really just kind of came out of nowhere this season. Just mired in just an absolute hallmark year for the Buffaloes. They are averaging 47.9 points, 477.9 yards per game, while only allowing 23.2. 367.5. It's Haltom's a pretty salty bunch. I think that offense is going to be just a little bit too much for Hebron, and I'm siding with the Buffaloes to keep their mojo rolling in this one.
Right before the playoffs, maybe it was like midway through the season, I hadn't heard anyone say anything about Haltom. Ever. And I looked it up. They were in 2014 they went winless. 2015 they won 1 game, and so I was like, okay, when you think of Haltom, you never think of football, and now here they are. 12-0, like you said, one of the best stories in all of the Metroplex in high school football. It's unbelievable.
Well, it was interesting too because everybody was talking about Haltom, but it was always like, when's the other shoe going to drop, kind of, because nobody really believed it. And then, October 12th, they go out and beat Trinity, and everybody's kind of finally like, well, maybe something's going on, here at Haltom. And then they just continue to put up points and put up points and put up points and beat people into the ground and beat Midland Lee 42-27. And it's hard to go against them now. They have the offense, obviously, to win a game that's a shootout, to win a game against a guy like Trajan Bridges, even if he goes off. But then they have the mojo too. They have the X factor right now. You know what I mean? Sometimes a team like that just keeps rolling and keeps kind of using that chip on their shoulder, even though maybe it shouldn't be there at this point anymore. It definitely should have been there in the beginning of the year. But after that Trinity win and after the way that they've moved through this season, they're still going to play with it, but they've earned everything they've gotten to this point. And I think that offense is, as you mentioned, is just going to be too much for Hebron.
The game on the picket line is interesting because our own Justin Thomas, he picked Hebron.
Yeah.
He's seen Hebron play a million times this year, so does he know something we don't know, or I don't know, or is he just being a homer? Who knows? Go ahead.
No, I said I was just checking to see that. Haltom's lowest scoring output has been 28 points, but outside of that, they are in. They eclipse 40 on the regular. It's not even.
It's like 28 is the lowest, and then 39 I think maybe is the second lowest. Like it's ridiculous. So
their floor is 5 touchdowns a game. It seems that's insanity. Yeah, I think that's just going to be a little bit too much for Hebron. So yes, a 5-1 nod for the. Actually, wasn't 5-1. Yeah, it was 5-1.
Yep, I think it was.
Hebron and Haltom look very similar when you look at them side by side on paper. So yes, it was a 5-1. Justin Thomas being the dissenting vote for Hebron. The rest of us rolling with the Haltom Buffaloes to continue this dream run of theirs. And let's round this out with a game that I know you'll have particular interest in, Brian. Saturday, 2 p.m. at a Kincaid Stadium in Dallas. Frisco Lone Star and John Tyler. A resurgent Frisco Lone Star.
Can we revisit the whole conversation about having Reedy and Lone Star play? Because at the beginning of the year it was like, man, we want to see them play, and then it was like, no, we don't, because Reedy would just kill them. I want to see them play again. I've changed my stance back to my original stance.
So I think after the playoffs are over, I'm going to talk to Rayburn. I'm going to talk to Cole. I'm going to hey,
do it for like charity or something.
Flag football, charity.
Just put up the pads one more time. If anyone gets hurt, you have a whole year to get ready. It's just, we need to see it. $20 a ticket, you'll sell some tickets, make some money, donate it to charity, whatever. But that would be so awesome. We'll never know. Lone Star, man, it's hard to pick against them right now. After what they've done in 2 games in the playoffs, they forced 6 turnovers against Lufkin. This defense. Can you think of a better defense on the 5A level right now in the area than Frisco Lone Star? Because I can't. And something that Rayburn told me earlier this week is, what really stood out to me is, they've been in the ringer in a lot of these games. They've gone blow to blow in so many games this year against really good teams, Highland Park being one of them. And it's finally coming into fruition now in the playoffs. And I think they're playing their best football. Rayburn's still telling me they haven't played their best football yet. Of course a coach is going to say that, but I can see that. Julian Larry, that offense, all those guys on the entire offensive unit really have just skyrocketed in production. And man, I can't pick against them until they until they lose. And they're out of this thing. I'm not going to pick against them the rest of the way, just based off of what they've done so far in these playoffs and how they've turned things around offensively mainly.
When we can keep our fingers crossed for a chance that Reedy and Lone Star could cross paths. Obviously not this year, not next year. 2020 though, next realignment, they're probably not going to be in the same district. So Coach Rayburn, Coach Cole, I don't know to what extent their non-district schedules are filled out, but let's make it happen, guys.
Yeah, work something out. But I don't know. A lot of guys will be gone by then. It may not be as juicy.
I don't know. Do you see these programs going anywhere anytime soon over the next couple of years?
No.
With as consistent as Lone Star's been, Reedy has clearly been on the come up just for a while now. So let's make it happen soon.
It's something about the playoffs for Lone Star too. This has been the best football program, not even close, in Frisco for the last 6 years or so, 5 years, and they're just proving it once again. Everyone was counting them out, myself included. A lot of people were picking them to lose against Legacy. Everyone picked them to lose against Lufkin, and here they are. You know, it's Lone Star time. I'm teasing a story on Salina that I met with them earlier this week, and you know how Salina ramps it up in the playoffs. Yeah. Well, so does Lone Star, and they're proving it once again.
Yep, a 6-0. Wow.
There you go.
What how
things change.
How fickle the
We're
pick line
drinking the
can be.
Kool-Aid, the Lone Star.
It makes more sense this week, though. I don't like the, you know, with barely eking out games over West Mesquite, McKinney North, and Poteet.
Lufkin is a way better team than John Tyler.
Yeah, Lone Star's got it all going right now. So.
Yeah, a 6-0 sweep in favor of Lone Star 1 week after we picked them to lose to Lufkin in a 6-0 sweep. So what the heck do we know? Yeah, that'll let's see. That'll do it for this edition of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. Should be a fun week in the third round. We'll be back on Monday to talk a bit about the third round, as we will now be down to the state quarterfinals at that time. The final 8 should be a doozy. So yeah, this is it's been Matt Welch of Star Local Media. Taylor.
Yes,
I did
it's
it
been
again.
so long since you've done it.
I did it again.
Yes.
Taylor, Brian, I appreciate you guys for tagging along. Folks, you enjoy the rest of your week, and we will talk to y'all later. Thanks for checking out this edition of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast, brought to you by Performance Food Group. They deliver more than 150,000 food and related products to customers all across the country. Their McKinney office is currently hiring Class A CDL drivers, order selectors, and many other entry and part-time positions. For more information, you can visit their website at pfgc.com/careers, or you can call 214-491-3130. That is Performance Food Group, located in McKinney at 500 Metro Park Drive.